Some more bad news for Toyota. The Department of Transportation has just confirmed it is investigating complaints about the steering system in the popular Corolla line. The car maker has already said it would consider a recall, which could affect 500,000 cars. And to make matters worse, Congress is now getting involved. Count them, three congressional hearings are scheduled starting next week to investigate the problems that led Toyota to recall over 8 million vehicles already. But just what will the congressional hearings accomplish? We asked two guys right in the thick of it. Ken Benziger of the Los Angeles Times. He's been on top of the Toyota story from day one. And on the phone, the ranking member of the House Oversight and Government Reform Panel, Congressman Darrell Issa, who has called for Toyota CEO Akio Toyoda to appear before the hearing. So, Congressman Issa, what will you do if he doesn't show up?
Well, the loss will be his, not ours. We certainly can subpoena him for a later date. And if he wants to come to the United States, he'll have to answer the subpoena if he wants to visit his companies. But playing hardball really isn't what we set out to do. What we set out to do is give the worldwide president and chairman of this company an opportunity to say that Toyota had seen their slowness, was going to make the changes, and that he was going to put the full force and authority worldwide behind the change.
All right, but let me just give you their side of the story, since they're not here to represent themselves. What they would say is, look, the guy obviously is not proficient in English. He clearly is even ill at ease in front of a Japanese audience. So you're going to be dealing through a translator. They have offered up their number two guy, somebody who's just as good. Why not be satisfied with him?
I don't think the American people are going to be satisfied until they see a Lee Iacocca type effort by Toyota to make it clear that they're making the investments and the changes and granting the authority to, if you will, safety czars to really make sure that these kinds of slow reactions don't happen in the future. This is Toyota's disaster today, just as it was Ford's disaster with the Firestone tires a number of years ago. Congress is looking into it, but ultimately only Toyota can regain public confidence by what they do.
All right. Well, Ken, I'm not going to get you in the middle of this political row because you're the expert in focusing on what has happened with Toyota. We now have 34 cases of people who have apparently died in accidents involving Toyota cars. But you know how these things happen. Very often when the reports come out, suddenly you have a slew of reports that are unverified, that are kind of hard to prove, of accidents taking place, that people hear of something and say, gee, that's why my friend or my relative died in the car, because they must have had the same thing happen to their car, right?
There's definitely that factor. You know, we looked at their complaints, and a lot of them came in the last few weeks, although they described accidents that happened long ago. So it's hard to say, and you're right, they don't verify them, so they are allegations. Some of them will end up in court, and I guess juries or lawyers will decide whether they're accurate or not. That remains to be seen. But clearly there are a lot of people who claim to have died as a result
of Ken,
Toyota
how much
vehicles.
further along in finding out exactly what happened will we get with a congressional hearing?
It's hard to say. You know, we've been talking to Congress, and Congress is requesting a lot of documents, and they're a lot more persuasive when it comes to coming up with information than a couple of reporters. So we hope to see a lot of information come out of that. But we don't really know. There's also a question about how much of the documents they get will come from Japan as opposed to just from their U.S. operations. And it's unclear whether Congress is going to get everything or just what U.S. has. And on that point, just a quick note on what the congressman said. It should be noted that Akio Toyoda worked in the U.S. for a number of years, and in fact was the head of Toyota's plant in Fremont, California. He may not speak the Queen's English, but he certainly does speak English.
So he's capable of it, but I think, Congressman Issa, the more persuasive case is that you have subpoena power to get all the records possible. It's that kind of subpoena power that really could put your efforts to best use, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And until NHTSA is satisfied, there'll be more and more recalls and more stoppages of various vehicles that could happen. But as you said, our subpoena power is primarily used to get documents and individuals directly related to those. Today, we issued a subpoena for 5,000 more documents that we believe was not delivered by Toyota, but that will be very instructive as to some of the delays that we believe you can call them bureaucratic or you can call them a cover-up. But either way, customers are going to want to know why it took so long,
right.
and we're going to try and get to the bottom of it.
Well, Congressman, let me put a hypothetical. What happens if, in going through these records, you find out that Toyota somehow has not filled its obligations under U.S. law? That is, it has done a run around some of the protections that consumer protections that we have here that car companies, no matter where they're from, are supposed to adhere to. What do you do then?
Well, there are two things. The Justice Department will get a referral from us, and the New York Attorney General will quickly file suit and do a press conference. Those are both guaranteed.
Absolutely. And again, it brings me back to my point, Ken. What do we get out of this? At the end of the day, as Congressman Issa used to tell me before, he used to say, and I guess he still believes it, the market is a better disciplinarian very often than politicians are. But isn't the market the place that is really going to have the most profound effect on the way Toyota does business?
Well, that all depends on how Toyota reacts. The market maybe didn't help prevent what's going on now, and Toyota climbed to the top in that situation. On top of the stuff that could happen from Congress, it's important to note that NHTSA has some punitive power on Toyota as well, so they may cause some things to happen. And in concert with Congress, they could come out with new regulations and new legislation. I know that's something that some people in Congress are talking about doing, right. Putting in new rules about vehicle safety. So the takeaway may be that consumers end up with cars that, in theory, could be safer in the long run. And that's certainly a positive outcome.
One final quick question to Darrell Issa. Darrell, don't you still believe that the market's a better disciplinarian than the politicians?
Absolutely, David. The fact is that $31 billion of market value of Toyota stock has already gone away. They're losing $2 billion a month, and their dealers are just dying with less than half of the normal sales. That is all teaching Toyota a very painful lesson. It's one of the reasons that our hearing is going to also focus on the Department of Transportation and how they're going to improve with or without new legislation. And we're going to act based on whether they can make the case that they can prevent this in the future without additional piling on of laws.
Congressman Darrell Issa and Ken Bensinger of the LA Times, thank you, gentlemen. Good to see you both.